Happy Monday evening. This is John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, with you. Beside me is Kate, our Director of Dispatch, and you are tuning in to Battling Bad Brokers. We've got, unfortunately, our esteemed colleague of collections is unable to attend today. She's got a customer that she's dealing with, so um, hopefully she'll drop in later in the conversation. But in the meantime, we're here to answer any questions that you may have regarding fraud in the industry and also dispatch. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us and let us know. Um, if you are not already a member of NOAA, the website is on the bottom of the screen, tnooa.com. Please go ahead and check us out. There's a lot of benefits here. Your uh, your payment for your subscription is basically um, very small compared to what you get out of being a part of NOAA. You get a ton of discounts operating with us, and you get everything you possibly need for running your trucking company under one roof. So please check us out. You're already seeing our Facebook page if you're watching this live, and we really do appreciate you being here. Don't hesitate to ask questions throughout, and we'll be covering those whenever we can. In the meantime, just a little bit of an update on the fraud prevention side. Been dealing a lot over the last week with freight guards. We've gotten two freight guards removed, and these were kind of simple, to be honest. We had a freight guard levied against a carrier for no call, no show. You don't typically see this very often. The carrier indicated they had a mechanical problem, and immediately the broker filed a freight guard. Um, that's unusual. That's clearly something emotionally driven. Um, but in the freight guard report, they specifically stated that if they can prove why they couldn't pick up the load, then the freight guard would come down. Well, the carrier sent a bunch of pictures as to some damage for their truck and why their truck was not operational, and nothing happened. So that's when they reached out to us. And I've basically had to blow the broker up just to get them to answer the dang phone or answer an email. However, we were successful in getting that freight guard removed. Uh, we've also been dealing with a bunch of old collection issues when it comes to double brokered loads. For those of you who don't already know, and I know one of our listeners last week uh, contacted me because they heard it on this, you have 18 months to collect on a load that you've not been paid for. 18 months. Now, that's for interstate loads. It's different from state to state if it's intrastate, but I'll let Jennifer get more into that the next time she's on air with us. Um, However, these collections that I've been working on are 16 months old. So I'm glad that we are moving forward in those and that we're seeing some success in getting that carrier paid. So if you haven't been paid on a load and you're looking to get something out of it, reach out to us. We can certainly help you get that taken care of. Even if it's a double brokered load, you do not have to carry a load and then walk away with nothing to show for it. Remember, the law says that the carrier must always be paid. We make sure that happens. Well, that's about it on the fraud prevention front. But I've also been dealing with some issues on dispatch, and I want to bring Kate in on this. I've been seeing some fraudulent dispatch services that have been popping up. They've either been acting as lease on carriers. You know, the dispatcher has their own carrier authority and books loads on their carrier authority to give them to their dispatch clients technically, that's double brokering, illegal brokerage. You cannot do that. That's illegal. Dispatchers can only uh, book loads for carriers under that carrier's MC. And if they try to allocate it out to another MC of any kind, you have to have a broker authority. So you have to be very careful in doing this. And when I've come across cases like this, it's not one victim, it's not two victims. We're talking a dozen plus victims. And these are major cases that DOT is going to be investigating moving forward. So, in light of this rash of bad dispatch services uh, doing all kinds of harm within the industry, Kate has put together a uh, an interesting presentation on what constitutes a good dispatch service versus a bad dispatch service, and what carriers really need to be looking for if they decide they want to use a dispatch service. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Kate, unless you got something else you want to talk about.
I do want to mention something it's something that I posted in the group recently. I see, and I know that everybody sees this, but all the time, and it seems like more and more and more and more, we get people that will post like a rate con or a lane that they ran in the group, and they'll say, "Oh, I never got paid. Has anybody had any experience with this broker?" And it's like a brand new broker, brand new MC, brand new broker, almost every single time. So when MCs are issued in numerical order, so the fewer the numbers, basically the larger the number, the newer the MC is. And I think they're issuing them now at like 158 something 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 something. There's 7 digits at this point. So
we're up to 159. I saw 159 earlier today.
Okay, 159. That's even further. For me personally, I don't deal with anyone. I would say probably if they're in like the 1 3s, the third, 139. That's probably like my cutoff. But anything newer than that, they've been issued in the last year or two, and they're probably not factorable. They're probably not legitimate, and it really is that simple. Like you guys don't have to you don't have to run a load just to find out, like, oh, I guess I'll just run it and find out. You don't have to do that. Pay attention to who it is that you're running for. Look up the company. Use there's a site called Carrier OK that's better than Carrier 411. That's got, anybody's able to get on there. Carriers, dispatchers, owner operators, whoever can get on there, brokers, whatever. Everybody can use this site, and you can look at that and use it to determine, you can see if they have a pending insurance cancellation, anything, when their authority was revoked, when it was reinstated, all of that. You can see all that stuff. So
the point is, the tools are out there. Those who don't know, I am also a contract dispatcher. In fact, Kate has had to certify me. So I am a NOAA certified dispatcher, and Kate will talk more about what that means here in a little bit. But I use basically brokers that are a year plus, and right now that's around the 144 mark in terms of MC numbers. But certainly pay attention. And if the broker is not factorable, that's usually a big red flag for anybody. I only know of 3 brokerages that are not factorable that are legitimate. And we're talking about new brokerages that I've worked with. So you really have to do your homework to make sure you're working with good brokers from the get-go. Oh, it looks like Jen's finally coming back in. That's awesome.
That's good
Hi,
news.
Jen.
That's good
You
news.
get your issue all squared away?
I think so. She's gonna give them 2 weeks more, and then call me on January 2nd in place if they did not pay.
Okay, well,
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Do you want to give an update as to what you got going on, Jen?
Did you talk about the OIG?
No, I have not talked about that yet.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So some time ago, I had an issue with one of my clients calling me up, and they had a load that they had just delivered. It was a military load. It wasn't a military like establishment to establishment like it wasn't one of those DoD strange looking military BOLs. It was just it was from military installment to military installment, but it wasn't unlike classified. It wasn't like a classified one or whatever. So they picked it up and they delivered it, but he couldn't get a hold of the broker that he'd gotten the load from, and it was real sketch. And so we he reached out to the initial people that was like the first. It was really strange because they picked it up at one military establishment, but there was a global logistics group that was involved in it too. And he reached out to them, and they were kind of really, well, let me see what I can do to get this moving. Let me see what I can. It was kind of real odd at first. They were real kind of covert. Anyway, long story short, we wound up finding out that the broker that he got it from was a scam broker. The people that were being kind of sketchy at first, they were actually legitimate people, but they were kind of worried about what we were trying to do. But all in all, it wound up that we got paid from one of the other parties. However, there's still the issue of this scam broker hanging out there that we still can't get a hold of. Which, mind you, they have like um insurance through like TIA. I can't remember what the exact name of it is. Their surety is like through TIA, so that's really like the weirdest thing. And so apparently the TIA doesn't care. They insure, obviously. But anyways, we wound up, worrying about initially, who had gotten this load. We had pictures, our drivers, the picture of him, his picture at the check-in at both the pickup facility and the receiving facility, which they did not have that information. They had taken our the paperwork where where the carrier had signed it and printed it and whited portion and left the printed part on there, and turned it in as their paperwork. And it had the right TCN number that it had to have. So but what happened was we were specifically not giving them the paperwork, because we didn't want them to pay the wrong people. And they circumvented us and went to the receiver and got the paperwork. So that's what caused they went to the government facility number two and got the paperwork and said, "Hey, we need this paperwork," and they gave it to them. Um, so that left us
Completely
worried.
against government regulations, by the way.
That left us kind of worried about where was the money going. Is it going, to a nefarious entity that might be using that money against us as a country? Was it a national security issue? Yada yada. We made some pretty starch claims in our emails to them, say, outlining what could possibly be going on. And the other day I had an email. Today I had a phone call from the Office of the Inspector General of the DoD, cyber crimes, and defense something yada yada. Anyway, sorry. I'm sorry, officer's mail that I don't remember all of your letters behind your name. Um, but anyways, and they're willing to work with us on any fraudulent military loads that we get. So any fraudulent military loads or anything that we find that's odd about DoD loads, the process that entails, like the shipper was supposed to be able to verify who the load was given to, but they really didn't have any idea who they gave the load to. I just load trucks, is what I was told. That was a civilian entity, but I just load trucks. So, to her benefit, I did have her email wrong. So when I reached back out to her, she did not get my email to question her process initially, but we did wind up aligning there at the end and figuring out what was going on. But she still didn't have any idea whether or not they were the approved transportation service provider for the government or not. Just knew that she loaded a truck. Um, so there are some ways to improve some things. There are some known activities across the country with various cells in different places, that I spoke with him about, that I had privy that I had we had figured out, and previous to this, that this area, these people, this entity, that they're reoccurring and issues. They pretty much knew about most of those people that I discussed with them. So they are pretty pleased to partner with us at NOAA, and being um, a helping hand in any way that we can, and we're going to help them in any way that we can on any of these government loads that have fraud associated with them, and that get, a lot of times we get these fraud military brokers that wind up brokering the loads, and then they never pay anybody. But then we can't do anything to recourse because all you can do is file on the bond. Nobody wants to take the government on contingency, so so you don't have anybody that will go to court. And so I actually discussed that with him a little bit, because with the government loans they won't pay twice, and I was like, well, according to Title 49, if the broker doesn't pay, if they're scammy like that, you should be able to recourse back to the. And he says, well, it's a privity thing. Like, for example, the chief executive, the president gets, gets to use that cloak of executive level. He goes, but a corporate executive can't use that. He says it's the same thing with military loads. And that made a little more sense to me, like that, um, as far as that goes. So, um, as far as that goes for understanding why they're kind of, I said, Title 49 doesn't say lessen except the military. I mean, it doesn't, not including the military. This all applies to everybody else, but not the military. And I realize that, but it's a privity thing. And I said, okay, I get. I mean, if you say so. I said, doesn't mean I have to like it. He says, I understand, but uh, but
Yeah.
he was
So the
actually a really
lesson
nice
here,
guy.
the lesson here is if you have a military load, make sure that you are booked with the right people. If I were you, I would contact the corporate office for the brokerage that you got the load from and verify
But
your load.
let me say, most of them are legitimate military brokers when they get the loads. They just have gone and gone through the whole process of doing the government, hoops and whatever, and they get signed up with them, and they do like these bad brokers do, that pay for a few loads, get their name established. Yep, military loads paying good. Duh, duh, duh. Now they've got all these people that want them. They start putting the loads out there, and they quit paying everybody. And the government doesn't know it either. The government says these people get a hold of this company's information, or they are this company. They check it out with the DOT. DOT says, yep, they exist. Yep, all that stuff checks out. Okay, all the boxes are checked. Okay, well, we let them haul it, or we give it to them for them to find carriers for. In the situation of Nelly's, the last time I brought up with him, I said, Nelly's brokered everything out. And I said, but when I called, they were like, well, we didn't hire Nelly's as a broker. We hired them as a carrier. Well, I said, but they have both broker and carrier authority on the same MC number. I said, don't let a carrier haul these loads if they have both dual authority on the same MC number, because that allows them to be able to sign up with you as a carrier on that MC number and turn around and broker it out on the same MC number. So they can say to you, oh, well, I was doing it as a carrier. And they turn around and say to somebody else, oh, I'm doing it as a broker, and he says, you know, they're licensed to do it. They're licensed to do it. Then that's not something they really, pick and choose over. Um, but he is willing to, talk with us and pick our brains over the stuff that we see, the stolen cargo, things like that. But it has to be military loads that he wants to hear about. So that's kind of exciting. I just thought it's
Yeah,
pretty.
I've had a contact of mine over at Scott Air Force Base that I've been in touch with, and he is with U.S. Transcom, but he's part of uh, the air component of U.S. Transcom. And I've had some discussions with him about updating what they call the AFIs, or the Air
Hmm.
Force instructions,
Hmm.
regarding these loads. And that was one of the specific things that I pointed out to him as well, was to make sure that you cannot use um, carriers who also have a brokerage authority on the same number. Uh, and it just makes sense to do that. It absolutely makes sense.
Also, something I learned doing this last situation was when I was spouting my Title 49 spiels I always do, is, well, we are not governed by Title 49. It's a government thing, and
Title
they're
10.
the Title 41 or 42 or something. He said like that, or something like that. I think it was 41. He thought. anyways, it doesn't matter. It's another title that they're actually governed by these securities,
Yeah.
whichever number is not really relevant to me at the moment. But I
Which is
found
something I
that out
didn't
the
think
last
about
time.
before. Yeah,
Right, and
I
so
didn't, and being the resident veteran, I should have known that, and that caught me by surprise when we first heard about that too.
we learned that actually because we were looking through why doesn't the government help the Title 49, da, da, da. And when we got on the Transcom site, we found those other links to how wherever so what they were governed by or whatever. And I can't remember what steps we went through, but I think it was on Transcom's site that told what governed them. So government turns out to be a whole different ball of wax, a whole different beast of their own, and it just goes to show that not everybody is equal. In this kind of situation, they're governed by different titles that tell how they get billed and what they're liable for.
Yeah, apparently, I'm expecting a phone call from this special investigator, this special agent from DOD, to talk about the same stuff. I can tell you all that Jennifer, when she first heard about this guy calling her last
Oh,
week,
gulp.
she called me and was a little was a little scared.
I was like, gulp. But I will tell you, I mentioned, I said, well, there was a guy that contacted me right after this load initially happened. His name was Anthony. He goes, oh, yeah, Tony, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to put him out there in case he doesn't want to be put out there. But I was like, yeah, that's him. That's it, Tony. So he knew exactly what I was talking about. So, anyways, hi, Tony. um, and I said, I gave a lot of information to him then. And we talked about the different known cells in within the confines of the borders, and he was most interested in anything that we know maybe external to the U.S., but definitely doesn't matter. Just if it's pertaining to fraudulent loads, they want to know about it.
I mean, let's look at the potential damage that something like that can cause. If I don't remember what that load was. I believe it was an engine. I think.
Actually,
Um,
it was parts from a particular base. That base housed repair parts and spare parts for a flying machine, one of the planes,
yeah,
something.
yeah. I think it was F-22s, wasn't it?
Yes, that's it.
Uh, and the F-22 is the premier air superiority fighter for the country, and is the best in the world. There's nothing that can match it. Um, and for these components, which in most cases are classified in
No,
terms of
those were not though.
capability.
So
No, not these particular ones, but
right,
but f- the point still exists
right.
that you can have a cargo of classified components. You don't know that you're carrying them, but these DoD components very often have classified technology encased in them or whatnot, and we cannot let that stuff fall into the wrong hands. And a lot of the theft cases that we're seeing. Um, Either involve items being ransomed or items being sold off onto the black market. And this is definitely something we don't want to see on the black market.
Yeah, we don't need to give our stuff away.
Hmm.
So
Okay. Well, with that being said, now we are at the bottom of the hour, and we have been promising everyone that we're going to talk a bit about dispatch services and the harms they can cause. So we have Dispatch Kate with us to help us out and sort through all these things. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to Kate. Kate, you want me to go ahead and throw your slides up?
Yes, please, because I don't know how to do it.
Oh, I've got you covered.
there we go. Dun dun dun.
All you, Kate.
How do I move through these? Oh, like that. Okay.
Oh,
Like that.
okay, okay.
They don't get all cute now.
Yeah, yeah, we're getting funky. Okay, you good to do this, Kate?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So this isn't necessarily just. This isn't really geared at like fraudulent dispatchers. It's really how dispatchers can deal with situations involving any kind of fraud in the industry as it pertains to their carriers. So, As a dispatcher, you are responsible for ensuring your client remains profitable with the cargo they haul. And while this may seem like a simple task, there's much more involved than meets the eye. Since the responsibility is falling on you to be the main point of contact, it is also your responsibility to keep the client safe. So anytime when a broker reaches out to who they, to the client per se, they're really reaching out to you. You're the one who, you make yourself the main point of contact when you book a load or when you reach out to a broker or shipper or receiver, anybody. You are the person that is essentially the face of whatever company you're working with. So running a credit check on any broker or shipper that you choose to book with. There are some shippers that are in, like I use Factors Network. So some shippers are in there and you can see what their credit history is like. It'll tell you if there's like slow pay, good pay, no buy, and the dates of those, when those things have happened. Checking for previous reports of fraudulent or suspicious activity, understanding the terms of any contract you sign on behalf of the client, ensuring the cargo is legitimate with all parties involved during any point between pickup and delivery, and remaining professional as you are the face of your client's company.
Yeah, I want to emphasize the professionalism part, if you don't mind. That is exceptionally important for any dispatcher because your job not only to make sure that your client stays profitable, but your job is also to keep them out of trouble. So you should be advising them whenever that something may come up that may jeopardize their operation in some way. For example, you book a load. And then they come back to you later and say, hey, you know what? Cancel that. I found something else I'd rather do. Then the first part of the discussion I have with them is, are you sure you want to do that? You could be looking at a freight guard if you try to cancel this load at this late hour. And that usually gets your carrier to think twice because let's face it, these are contracts. And most dispatchers, actually all dispatchers, should be operating under a power of authority or power of attorney for their client. You're basically contracting your client to haul that load, and your word is bond in this case. So keep your clients out of trouble. Sorry,
and
Kate.
that goes both ways. I have personally let people go for doing stupid stuff that really kind of makes me look bad. We're representing each other, my business, the name of my business is attached to me in every email I send, everything. So if I'm associated with somebody who is like, I've had drivers that go into shippers or receivers and like start cussing at them and all kinds of stuff, and I just let them go. Like, we're not going to do that. That's not somebody that I want to work with. I don't want to be looked at as the person that works with that person or whatever. So it goes both ways.
And it's okay to be selective like that. There may be a bajillion dispatchers out there, especially in these dispatch farms overseas. But the good dispatchers that are out there, and I can say that every NOAA dispatcher that has been approved is a good dispatcher. We're hard to come by, and if you can get a hold of one of us and get one of us on your team, it's going to be a win-win. But if you're not quite the kind of carrier that is top quality, then I've turned people away. I have cut people off. You got to do what you got to do. You're absolutely right. It is a business we try to run.
So let's see, credit checks. Yeah, using things like Factors Network or really any carrier that factors, which is 99% of them. A lot of them will give you their like a login for their factoring company so that you can look at brokers' credit and stuff. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're giving access to everything. There's a lot of factoring companies where, like, I have a login for someone, they use Operify, but my login is specifically to look at credit checks. So like that's one of the only options I'm allowed to use when I log in. I can't go in and look at all their finances and all that stuff. So it doesn't have to be that personal.
And yeah, I have an arrangement with OTR, and dispatchers can work with specific factoring companies. Sometimes it's a referral program or something along those lines. I work with OTR, and I have an OTR portal dedicated to me as a dispatch service. And all of my clients who use OTR, they link to my portal. And from my portal, I can do credit checks, and I can also file their factoring for them, which is a service that I offer.
Well, I have an
Um,
agreement with Sunbelt.
but the point is that if you are a dispatcher, you really should have some source of being able to evaluate these brokers from a credit standpoint.
And those score, it'll show you their score. Well, maybe not. Well, yeah, they usually, I think all of them show a score. It's between 1 and 100. 100's perfect, obviously. So, and there's in certain applications, like the Factors Network that I use, tells me, again, like I said earlier, it tells me slow buy, no buy, good pay, slow pay.
Okay, mine just actually shows days to pay and whether it's a no buy or if there's nothing there, they don't have credit. So,
Oh, dang. Well, I love the Factors Network for that. And I can look at comments. I can look at, they even have like sections of how much, like a dollar amount of how much of their invoices they pay between 15 and 30 days and how much is paid between 31 and 45 days and, you know, all sections of that stuff. So it's really neat. And there have been times that, like at the end I say use your better judgment when looking into things like this, as it could be the determining factor. So I know when I look at the Factors Network portal, even if it says review required, I can look at that, their history, and tell whether or not they're going to be approved, whether or not the factoring company is going to let us use them. And a lot of it is based on, okay, are those no buys or slow buys from 2020 or 2021? Are they from 2023? Do they have, good pay reports lately, bad pay? I mean, if they've got reports of bad pay recently, then they're not going to let us factor with them. But if they're bad pay or slow pay or whatever things are old, then it's fine. So 9 times out of 10, I can't say that for everything. So it is not a guarantee that you will be paid just because a broker shows they're factorable. It is just a way to be cautionary and safe. So in order for a brokerage to remain an active authority, they only need a $75,000 bond, no matter the size of the company. So, example, TQL, massive broker, only has a $75,000 bond. If they were to go bankrupt tomorrow, they would not be able to pay all of their clients everything that they're due. They would, like, each person would get pennies. So,
or less.
Yeah.
Be sub penny.
And there are some brokers, I worked with some brokers that are smaller that have a $500,000 bond. I mean, I love to see that stuff because those are the people that really, they actually care, So it doesn't necessarily mean that just because they're factorable guarantees that it'll be paid, especially if you have a recourse contract with your factoring company. They can, come back and recourse or whatever. It's really just a way to kind of stay safe and look and see who it is that you're dealing with. And again, you can see how much of a bond they have and any reports or whatever on platforms like Carrier OK. So here's a screenshot of Carrier OK, and it can tell you if a broker has any reports made against them on their platform for things like non-payment, suspicious activity, theft, double brokering, etc. So it gives you like a full scope snapshot of the company. You can see when I know it's not shown in here, but you can see when their authority was granted, any previous revocations, even what they're authorized to haul. So here, this is a snapshot of a broker that has a report for suspicious activity. I've looked up other pretty popular, you know, just to see what they show. Like I looked up a broker who I know a couple times in the past I've caught double brokering, and they've got double brokering reports, fraud, theft, suspicion. I mean, all kinds of stuff, non-payment. So that's definitely handy.
Carrier OK, if I can plug real quick here, is a fantastic tool for this kind of thing. And it is growing. It was only recently started. It's about, frankly, the same age as the association. And we are seeing huge improvements on a regular basis with the system. For example, if you go to suspicious and you mouse over it, in the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to read the comments that were left by whoever filed the claim. And notice this is a broker. So who do you think filed the report against the broker? Yes, carriers, you can get on this and you can file reports against brokers.
This
Now,
particular screenshot is one that I took of a broker that I reported for suspicious activity. So
okay.
I reported this guy and just used my screenshot.
The good news is that carriers now have a source to report bad activity by brokers, and this is the first of its kind. We haven't seen this in a reporting tool yet. And this tool is also going to eventually allow for carriers and brokers to contest certain negative reports. And there will be a arbitration process that goes into that. So this is trying to be as fair as humanly possible. Now, the developers are watching for carriers who just sit there and spam negative reports against brokers and vice versa. They do not allow those reports to move forward. However, they've got a pretty damn good handle on it, and it is great that we now have, as carriers, have an opportunity to file reports.
And you can also see corporate contact information on here. At the very top, it shows you corporate contact information. So personally, this is just me. I don't know how everybody else does things, but I will, if somebody hasn't paid my carrier, or even if it's something as stupid as a TONU, I'll hound them. I don't care. I'll email their accounting team every other day. Hey, you have an unpaid invoice. Hey, you have an unpaid invoice, you know, whatever. And I know they get annoyed, and 9 times out of 10, they don't pay it. But I have even gone as far as reaching out to the corporate people on more, not stupid little things like TONU, but I've gone as far as reaching out to corporate people about bigger issues that have something to do with non-payment. So that's also a really neat tool that's in there. So, as your client's limited power of attorney, you are responsible for signing contracts on their behalf. And it is integral that you understand what it is you're signing, as many contracts have clauses in them that have the client sign away legal rights they hold when working with a particular brokerage. So a big one that people like to point out is, our brokerage contract says that you waive your rights to documentation, to see documentation under 49 CFR 371.3. And they technically can't do that. So that's something that you are protected to have the right to view. So if a contract says something like that, it's probably just somebody that you don't want to work with. If you're not sure about something, ask. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't just take a load because it, we need to move, but something about it is just a little fishy, and don't take stuff for that reason.
Yeah, keep in mind, federal law trumps these contracts.
Mm-hmm.
If it's whichever is the more stringent of the two is what's going to hold up. So since brokers have the requirement to provide this information, just putting a waiver into their contract is not enough to relieve them of that responsibility. So you keep that in mind. That's where the legalities come into it.
Hmm.
In fact, we've been seeing more and more that that statement in a lot of these brokerage agreements, um, waiving the right to the broker transparency law, has been disappearing off these contracts. So we are definitely making a huge effort in that.
Cool. I did not know that. Checking paperwork. So anytime your client picks up a load, you need to check their paperwork. I hound my people to send me the BOL, especially if I have a bad feeling. Sometimes, I mean, if it's a broker that I've worked with a trillion times, then it's fine. I'll look at it later. But if it's someone new that I've never worked with before, or the MC is, within the last like 3 years or so, then hey, send me your BOL so I can check it out. You want to make sure the load that you're contracted to haul is rightfully where it should be in terms of who's authorized to move it. So look out for who is listed as the carrier on the bill of lading. And sometimes a carrier is not listed, and that's fine. It's not on every single one of them. But the brokerage or the shipper is always listed. So there should be a section that says, it'll say, pick up from, and that's the shipper's address, the receiver's address, and then it'll say third party freight bill charges. And that's where you want to look. So if it says anything other than the broker that you booked it with, you can call unless you're sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's actually that broker's load. Um, I've called people, and don't do it just because you don't stop yourself from calling because you're afraid that the broker is going to be mad. Nobody is going to be mad at you for making sure that everything is legally kosher. So
Only the scammer will get mad at you.
And
yeah,
and
and
just to chime in there, I've called up brokers before, and they've kind of been a little like, but when I sit there and I say, look, with the amount of scamming that's going on these days, the amount of fraud and identity theft, we're just double checking to make sure everything is status quo. They're like, you're right, you're right. You can't hardly haul a load without double checking. And they even if they're annoyed momentarily, they will back right off.
yeah, and they don't. I mean, I have had people uh be contacted and say, you called my shipper and blah 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 and whatever. But I don't. It really doesn't bother me. I just try to make sure that my people are safe. So even if it shows, you can pretty much tell the name of the company under where it says third party freight bill charges. You can tell if it's a brokerage 9 times out of 10 just by looking at the name of it. Like it'll say something something logistics, or something something transportation, or something something brokerage, or whatever. Um, so if another brokerage is listed, that's a red flag, and you need to contact the listed brokerage on the bill of lading immediately. And this needs to happen very preferably before the load is delivered, because it's way harder if it gets delivered.
I've also seen the broker listed as the carrier, and that is okay. It's just somewhere on that BOL. The
Actually, come to
broker
find
you
out,
booked the
that's not
load.
okay. Just so you all
Well,
know,
no,
because
no, no, no. You're right. From a regulatory standpoint, it's not, but it is not enforced either. Kate's absolutely right. Under the regulation per FMCSA on how a BOL is constructed, and I'm sorry, I don't know the regulation number off the top of my head, um, but the broker should be listed as the third party, and the real carrier should be listed in the carrier block.
right, and
What
I
I'm
do know
saying
that.
is, as a industry standard, as an industry accepted documentation, the broker can be listed as the carrier, which sucks, but
So, but the reason for that is usually the broker is listed as the carrier because that is the entity that is assigned to find the carrier. And that's just in there as a placeholder. However, a lot of times it doesn't get removed from there, and that is effectively holding themselves out as the carrier, what it looks like. And so that's not legal. But like John said, it's often overlooked because people understand why it gets there to start with.
Look, I use Adobe for pretty much everything, and I've only done this with Landstar loads, and I'm not going to explain why because it's pretty obvious. But I will, if it says on my bill of lading that if it says carrier Landstar and another brokerage is listed, now we know that if you call the brokerage, they're not going to care because Landstar and their stupid clause thing and their whatever. So what I do is mark out where it says Landstar in the carrier portion and put my carrier's name, and then I upload it to Adobe and password lock it so that it can't be changed. So, and then I send that to them, and that's what they have.
Oh yeah, I do that too.
And check your addresses and make sure the pickup and delivery addresses are the same as your Raycon, because there are instances of cargo theft.
Yep. Be leery whenever you see a blind shipment. Make sure you know who you're working with when you get a blind shipment, because they're going to want you to throw away the original BOL, and that should not be a good thing to do.
And blind shipments, so blind shipments are a thing, and they are relatively common, but it is not common for a blind shipment to go to be in a different state from the original address. So it's common for it to be a different town because the customer, whoever just wants to remain anonymous, maybe they don't want their address on somebody's paperwork where they can come back and find it later, whatever the case may be. But then in that case, they'll just, make the address, the next town over, or some public place, whatever, an address that doesn't exist. And they'll say, okay, this is actually going here. But it's not supposed to be something that says it's going to California and then on the bill of lading says it's going to Florida. That is not okay. Ever.
Case in point, the guest that we had a few weeks ago with the copper that was supposed to go to North Carolina that wound up in California, and it was
that's not a thing.
Yeah, it was because of that there was the BOL. The carrier who hauled it to California kept the original BOL, even though it was quote unquote blind shipment, and that is how they realized that this was a problem, and that's how they got their hands back on the cargo. So carriers, keep all your paperwork, even if the broker tells you to throw it out. Keep it just in case. It's an insurance policy for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And then this is just talking about double brokering. Y'all know what double brokering is. It's a person who disguises themselves as carrier in order to book a load from a broker. It's typically done when a broker posts a load for a decent rate. A phony carrier will book the load claiming they have a driver, take some of the money, and broker it out again for a lower rate. A lot of times these people have a factoring company, and that's how they get paid. So the scam broker works with the factoring company. They get the rate confirmation from the original broker. They factor it with the factoring company, and so on and so forth, especially if they have carrier authority. And then they just rebroker it under the broker authority. Always make sure to verify that the brokerage you worked with is on your bill of lading, or that the carrier's name is on the bill of lading. It is punishable by up to a $10,000 fine, and reports can be made on places like truckstop.com or Carrier OK.
I want to piggyback on this a little bit here. The double brokering scenario that Kate mentioned is what we call the skim off the top double brokering, and
it's the most common one. There's a whole bunch.
It is. I was seeing it less and less as the year went on, but I am seeing it more often now. But what we are seeing a lot of is the reverse, which we call the too good to be true double brokering scam, where the rate is really good.
$6,000 for 2,000 miles on a flatbed hotshot.
Yeah, no, guys, don't get suckered into a really good rate, because that right away is going to be a huge red flag.
All right, guys, I'm going to go. I've got my next meeting, so I'm going to let you guys wrap this up. Thank you guys for being great co-hosts. Awesome presentation, Kate. Appreciate it. I already read through it, so I'm versed. Y'all have a good night.
You too.
Take care.
So then there is co-brokering. Co-brokering is still technically not legal, but it is widely accepted. And as long as there is a co-brokering agreement and all parties involved in the transaction are aware of the co-brokering agreement, it is okay. So it's a very thin line.
I see a lot of Landstar loads that fall
Oh
into this
yeah.
category.
Oh yeah.
A lot.
And I called the broker. Oh, we know they do that. Oh, we know. Okay, but I didn't know. My carrier didn't know. Your shipper didn't know. Your receiver didn't. Nobody knew. So that is illegal double brokering. But you can't. There's really not a whole lot that. It sucks. There's really not a whole lot that you can do in situations like that, except just not haul the loads. I mean, it really sucks. And in an actual legal, I guess, sort of co-brokering standpoint where everybody knows about everything and everything is, understood, only one fee should be taken from that load, and it should be split between the two brokers. It should not be given to one broker and they take $200, and then they give it to another broker and they take $200, and then they give it to the carrier for $400. It should not be like that. It should be one sum amount that both brokers split.
So if you try to apply the broker transparency law in one of these situations, you should see that. You should see that on the freight bill. So keep that in mind if you intend to invoke your 49 CFR 371.3 rights.
If you look at your paperwork and you suspect your load may be double brokered, contact the listed party on the BOL and explain the situation. Most often, they will be thankful you reached out and the fraudulent broker will be cut out of the equation. You will receive a new rate confirmation from the actual broker and continue on with the load. Now, I have called people before and explained to them what's going on, and they haven't really understood what I'm saying. And they'll say something like, no, you called on this load and we already had it covered. Sorry, somebody else covered it. And I got to call back. No, I physically have the freight on my truck and we got it from somebody else, not from you. And you kind of have to explain the whole thing. And it's, I don't know. It's such a common practice that it really kind of boggles my mind when I call people and they're like, they don't just immediately get what I'm trying to put down.
The times I encounter something like that is either a very small brokerage or a very new brokerage, or they got a new employee who's and usually when a brokerage brings in new employees, they start them off in the dispatch office. So they don't know. They just don't.
Yeah. After that, don't have any further contact with the fraudulent broker. So if they email you, if they call you, text you, whatever, just don't even say anything. And I have answered my phone just for fun, and they've cussed me out, and it's entertaining. But your best bet really is to just not have any contact with the other broker. Just ignore them and use platforms like Carrier OK to report your experience with the fraudulent broker in an effort to keep other carriers safe. And remain professional, please. Just like we talked about in the beginning, you are the face of your client's company. You're the main point of contact for every party involved, and you are there to represent your carrier. So anything you do is directly representative of the carrier you're working for, and any harm that's done can harm the carrier's company, and depending on the severity, could even put them out of business. So remain professional. Reach out to people around you, colleagues or supervisors or what have you, if you're in a situation that you're unsure how to handle. For me personally, I've got an amazing group of 5 girls, and we can hop on a Zoom in an instant and bounce ideas back and forth off each other. And it's a really good, I don't know where I would be in my business if I didn't have them and that support. So it's definitely really important to make connections with people that understand your line of work and can give you any help or advice or guidance when you need it. One thing that I really did want to bring up was the carrier rate tariffs. So this might be a better thing for John to talk about because it's not really something that I'm like super familiar with, but familiar enough.
It's actually more of a Gen thing, but bottom line is you don't have to accept a broker's rules and regulations. You can present your own tariff for things like detention, layover, etc. Um, and if you don't submit your own tariff, then you are subject to whatever the broker has in their contract. Now, keep in mind that brokers don't like seeing carriers submit tariffs themselves because when they do that, then if the broker issues rate confirmation, that's basically them agreeing to your tariff. Um, if you redline something in a broker's contract, they tend to not want to use you. So keep in mind when you try to do this kind of thing. And I'm going to ask Jen to focus on tariff discussions for next week so we can kind of get a little more into that. She has far more insight into that than I do, especially with the attorneys in her office. They're really good at that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I messed up and meant to put this slide like 3 slides back, but it didn't save that way, I guess. But that's it. That's all of it. That's all we got.
Well, one of the things that I definitely want to point out here, we talked a lot about dispatching today, and I know there are a lot of carriers out there who think that dispatch services are evil. You don't have to use a dispatch service, but they have as much of a right to exist in this industry as brokers do. And some carriers absolutely depend on dispatch services to be able to function, especially very small trucking companies, the 1 and 2 truck companies. When the owner is also the driver and doing everything else, they really don't have time to find loads for themselves. So that is when a dispatcher becomes an invaluable tool to that carrier. So you don't have to use one, of course not. But for some,
Going out to a
it's a
restaurant.
necessity.
You don't have to go
Yeah.
out to eat. You do it because you want to. Because you don't want to cook for yourself.
Just when you do hire a dispatcher, pay attention and make sure you're using one that answers to what it is that you're looking for when you're a carrier. Make sure that they are people who understand hours of service requirements. Make sure they are people who actually have a valid contract that they are presenting you. Don't just sit there and hire a dispatcher by word of mouth. Please, dear God, don't do that.
Yeah, because I could be their friend or their mom or brother or whatever. Oh, hey, I'm going to help my sister start up her business. Go with her. Oh, yeah, I've had friends that used her. And references, get references. And references can be faked too. But it's still just a little bit of a safeguard.
I imagine pretty much, well, actually, I know here in NOAA, all the dispatchers who are NOAA certified dispatchers, we've been vetted. Kate has followed up with all their references. Kate has reviewed all of their contracts. They're the real deal. So feel free, if you are a NOAA member and you're looking for a dispatcher, contact Kate and she'll get you hooked up with somebody who has been properly vetted so that you don't have to worry so much about a scammer getting control of your company by running your trucks for you.
And get their EIN. I know that sounds like basic or something that might not really have a lot of sustenance to it, but anybody that's serious about their business is going to have an EIN, even if they didn't. Not all dispatchers have an LLC. It's not required to have an LLC. You do need to operate under a DBA at least, but you do not need to have an LLC. And if you have a DBA, you can use your social security number, but I'm telling you, if someone is serious, they're going to have an EIN. So get their EIN. That'll give you an idea of their level of professionalism, I suppose.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. It's been a very enlightening session. I know we don't do lots of presentations like this, but I think it was important to get that information out for everybody. If you ever have any questions regarding dispatch services, again, reach out to Kate. You can also reach out to me. I am a contract dispatcher myself, and we can help you in trying to make some good decisions if that's what you're looking for. And otherwise, you just take care of yourselves out there, guys. There's so much going on. And the first time you think that something just isn't right, stop and look at everything. And if you can't find it and you still feel that way, call us. We'll help you. That's what we do. We're here to help. Again, if you are not a member of NOOA, please sign up. It is very well worth it. At just over $42 a month, you get so much. And frankly, it's more about peace of mind than anything else. The discounts you get are amazing, and everything you can possibly need for your business is going to be under one roof. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us when you need us.
Hey, I did just have a
Kate,
carrier.
you got anything to wrap up with?
Yes. So I had a carrier that actually just got insurance through the association, and I was surprised that the rate was what it was. This is the second time this has happened with one of my people. I'm continuously surprised. It's really fantastic. It's really great. And you save, if you get insurance through the association, your money is really, truly well spent.
I have heard nothing but glowing reports from everyone who has used our insurance division. And the savings that we're seeing is frankly unreal. And I have to use that word because I have no idea how the hell they do it, but they do a damn fantastic job.
It makes you question all the other people. Where's all this money going to other companies? What's going on?
Absolutely. These guys are very good at what they do. So it is definitely well worth membership just for that alone. Just for that alone, it's amazing. Anything else, Kate?
Nope, that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, folks, like always, stay safe out there. Take care of each other. And if you ever have any problems, give us a shout. Until next week, John Cantera and Kate, we are here to help you anytime. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.